Hello students and friends. Today I am going to tell about homeopathic Medica. Before start, please subscribe to this channel. Description of human idiosyncrasies. Why know human idiosyncrasies? 1. Know others. 2. Know thyself. 3. Understanding idiosyncrasies can cause a psychological awakening. 4. Can anyone understand idiosyncrasies? 5. Negative use of the knowledge of human idiosyncrasies. 6. Facing again and again cosmic game. 7. Detachment from idiosyncratic influences. 8. Hierarchical and in-depth knowledge of idiosyncrasies. 9. Idiosyncratic diagram. 10. Usual misinterpretations about idiosyncrasies. 1. Know others. Since the beginning of history, man has been a social being. He lived and still lives in teams like couples, families, races, social groups, companies, political parties, religions, etc. This brings him in contact with many different people, and a great many problems arise from this. Communication, problems that have to do with the sincerity and honesty of the intentions and behaviors of others. Let us see some of the important and crucial questions that arise from our everyday communication with other people. My companion doesn't stop saying that he loves me. Is this true? Do we match with my companion? He says that he loves me, but his behavior says the opposite. How on earth he has such a different from mine aspect about love? How is this possible? My mother is such an overprotective and dominant person towards me. Although I never stop telling her that this bothers me a lot. Does she really love me? Are her intentions honest, or is she manipulating me? My father is lost in his own universe. Why is he doing this? Does he do it out of indifference? Or is it simply because he is introvert or coward? Could it be because he is a vain person after all? My son always gets in trouble, hangs out with bad companies, cares only about having a good time, and doesn't give a dime about his future. Why is he doing this? What is the matter with him? My daughter is in love all the time with the most unsuitable people. She behaves like a moron. How can she not see that others take advantage of her beauty and youth? Is she foolishly romantic, or simply damn? My best friend has recently accused me to others behind my back. Why did he behave like that, although I was so straight to him? What's the matter with him? How can he think and act like that? My boss is so glad when he offends others. How can he be so malicious? Where's the pleasure in such a behavior? Is that priest a hypocrite or not? Is that politician a crook or not? Is this beggar sincere? Is this person honest and sincere? Can I do business with him? Will we fit or not? All the above questions concern know others. Every day we wonder about other people around us, about their intentions, honesty, sincerity, mode of thinking, emotions, and behavior. We are puzzled by their inconsistencies, contradictions, extreme behaviors, foolishness, or even about their good behavior. We've got a difficulty to interpret in an objective way their behavior and what lies beneath it. That is, we don't understand their idiosyncrasies. We lack the ability to know others. To know thyself. There is another, more important lack of ability. We lack the ability to know thyself. We don't know us, ourselves. We don't know our idiosyncrasy, that is, our external self. Furthermore, we also don't know our inner self. That is the reason why, in the same way we have questions about others, in the same way we also have questions about ourselves. How come I didn't realize my past faults at the time I did it? How come I now see things clearly about the past? What has changed in me, so as to be able to realize things now? Why Many times, while doing something wrong, I am so sure that I am doing the right thing. Why, so many times, I am not sure about what's wrong and what's right? About what do I really want? About what suits me or not? Why, on earth, do I want this thing today and its opposite next day? Why do I usually behave in such a constant and predictable way? Even when I know that I behave wrong and that hurts me, many times I keep doing the same thing. Why, so? How is it possible that for the same event I have certain feelings while others next to me completely different? How come I think in a certain specific way and not in another one? Why is my way of thinking changing at times? The common thing that runs through all these questions and is, in fact, the answer to all these questions, is idiosyncrasies. Idiosyncrasies affect all human beings and determine, in a decisive way, not only our material level but even our psychic one. They enslave our sensual and intellectual psyche and thus define our thinking, feeling, and behaving. 3. Understanding idiosyncrasies can cause a psychological awakening. On the course of history, man has always been trying to interpret human thinking, feeling and behavior. He sought answers in psychology, history, sociology, biology, religion, even astrology. Hippocrates, Freud, Pavlov, and others tried to determine human typology so as to give answers concerning know thyself and know others, as mentioned above. But it was homeopathic medicine that really made the difference. By using the scientific experimental method of double-blind trial, proving, and by developing the theory of miasmas and idiosyncrasies, has managed to reach a thorough and objective identification of human types. This knowledge is not only helpful in theory as diagnostic tool, but also in clinical practice. We can now cure effectively, both physically and psychologically, by administering, each time, the remedy similar to the specific idiosyncrasy of the patient. Is this a minor thing? No, it's of extreme importance. But, still, my opinion is that there is an even greater effect. Understanding idiosyncrasies can cause a psychological awakening to those that realize the true meaning of such knowledge. This awakening can, potentially, drive us out of the world of illusion, the world of Maya that we all live in. It can help us reach true knowledge of ourselves and others. We can examine ourselves and others objectively and clearly. The phenomenon of idiosyncrasies is indeed a universal one. It affects the entire humanity. It affects not only us, not only those we know around us, but it affects all of us. Nobody escapes these physical and psychological chains. Idiosyncrasies live inside us and all around us. Believe it or not, they affect our body and mind tremendously. I don't think that there is any need for any sophisticated proof of their existence, like the proving, for instance. Just look around you and inside you. Compare your character and the character of all those you know well around you, with the descriptions of characters, that is, idiosyncrasies, found in a homeopathic Materia Medica. You needn't be an expert or even a homeopathic doctor so as to recognize that inside us and around us there exist these idiosyncratic influences called lachesis, platina, medorinum, phosphor, etc. The only reason that for so many years we couldn't identify such influences was that we didn't have a thorough and scientific description of them. If you are a city man and you go out on a field, then all plants around you are just weed. But if a botanist comes along with you, or even an old, experienced villager, he will tell you that this is chamomile, that is mint, that is calendula officinalis, the other one is digitalis. purpurea, etc. In the same way, for a newcomer in the world of idiosyncrasies, all people are in the beginning just people, but gradually they become people influenced by Lachesis, Platina, Medorinium, etc. Understanding idiosyncrasies is not only useful to a homeopathic doctor, or to any doctor, it is a critical knowledge for any psychologist or psychiatrist who wants to understand in depth his patient. It is also a great help to any judge, lawyer, police officer, journalist, priest, or even businessman who wants to check the sincerity of declarations and behavior of the people with which he is involved during his job. It will also help a great deal any trainer or teacher that wants to individualize his effort. The writer or the actor can get into the skin of his books or plays characters. Any working man can have the chance to understand the way his colleagues think, feel, and behave and achieve a better cooperation. Anyone can, if he wishes, coexist peacefully with his close ones, relatives, neighbors, colleagues, and friends. Parents have the chance to understand in depth their children's thinking and behavior and thus establish a better communication. Kids, on the other hand, after reaching a certain maturity, can understand better their parents and thus contribute to a more calm and loving family environment. Love partners can establish a more loving and caring relationship by understanding others and by discriminating between their companions, idiosyncrasy and his real inner self. For can anyone understand idiosyncrasies? There arise two important questions. At this certain point, can anyone understand idiosyncrasies, and is this knowledge only for specialists? In order to answer to these two questions, we have to bear in mind the great differences between the several stages of knowledge: notice, think, realize, become conscious of, and co-experience, live fully. In my book about the function of thinking, I have referred in details to these different levels and ways of knowing. Noticing corresponds to sensual psyche, thinking to intellectual psyche, realizing or establishing consciousness. Awareness corresponds to conscience psyche and co-experiencing to individual spirit. That is the reason why Jesus said to a faithful reader of the Bible, "Do you realize what you are reading about, or are you just reading?" Universal law of hierarchy of knowledge stands bold also concerning the knowledge of human idiosyncrasies. Sigmund Freud was the one that first introduced the theory of subconscious level and explained the mechanism of all kinds of neurosis, but still, many colleagues of his times confirm that his was neurotic himself until his death. Lenin, one of the great theoretical minds of communistic ideas about freedom and the liberation of people from other people, was indeed despotic and manipulating masses. Most of the great idealists and reformers lived a life that was pretty much contrary, or at least not according to their ideals and declarations. Only a few ones, like Socrates and Jesus, seem to have lived according to their beliefs and teachings. Let me tell you that law of hierarchy of knowledge does stand bold also for the knowledge of human idiosyncrasies. Most of the homeopathic doctors know the theory of human idiosyncrasies and apply it in their everyday clinical practice. At what level do they know? Have they only noticed it and thought about it? Have they realized it? Or did they co-experienced it? Still, how many of them live a personal life according to their level of knowledge? I do know many famous homeopathic teachers and professors whose personal life does not correspond to their theoretical knowledge of idiosyncrasies. And don't think even for a minute that I am the exception to this rule. But I do, sincerely, try. This book, and many others that I have read, gives to anyone the opportunity to know about human idiosyncrasies. Up to what point? The answer is simple, up to his own point. According to the universal law of hierarchy, he can know theoretically and in practice, according to his level of psychic evolution. Some can only notice such a knowledge. Others can think a lot about it, a few ones can even realize it, and even fewer can co-experience such a deep knowledge. That is the reason why so often we may have read a philosophical book years ago, and after many years, due to certain conditions, we come to realize its truths and teachings. Many more years may pass before we may manage to live according to these teachings. So, you see, the answer to the above questions is, yes, theoretically, we all have access to the knowledge of idiosyncrasies, but each one of us reaches the level of knowledge that he deserves according to his psychic evolution. 5. Negative use of the knowledge of human idiosyncrasies. There pops up another important question: isn't it possible that someone may use this knowledge negatively? If this is possible, shouldn't one avoid displaying it to the general public? Couldn't such a deep and critical knowledge become a mental atomic bomb in the minds of everyone? For example, a perverted psychologist/doctor/politician/guru could use negatively such knowledge in manipulating others, knowing their idiosyncratic psychological weaknesses. A salesman could sell easier his useless or dangerous products just by manipulating his clients' idiosyncratic weak points. A womanizer could drive any woman to his bed just by appealing to their sensitivities. Human history is, indeed, full of such examples of negative use of truth and knowledge. All knowledge, truths, ideals, and moral teachings have been misused at times, they have been perverted. Innumerable crimes have been carried out in the name of positive religions, humanistic ideals, and especially in the name of freedom, justice, and, most of all, love. So, why this knowledge of human idiosyncrasies be an exception to the rule? Isn't the old Greek teaching man is the measure of all things true? 6. Facing again and again cosmic game. God, nature, universe, call it as you like, has given man the ability to have a certain degree of free will. We have the freedom of choice to go up or down. This is, of course, only true as concerns world of diversity. It is only there that you can find up and down, positive and negative action, positive and negative use of knowledge and truth. An inferior man, in the sense of psychic and moral evolution, can make use of any knowledge either positively or negatively. Not having enough understanding and realizing of any knowledge, usually perverts whatever he learns and makes wrong use of it in his everyday life. On the contrary, a superior man, again in the sense of psychic and moral evolution, through natural thinking and positive attitude realizes the depth of knowledge of human idiosyncrasies and tends to use it positively. Consequently, the very knowledge of human idiosyncrasies is, at the level of diversity world, a two-edged knife that cuts both ways, positively and negatively. Man was, is, and perhaps always be the determining factor as concerns final result. The individual is always the decisive factor. You see, man is the measure of all things. 7. Detachment from idiosyncratic influences. We are living in an era that man has the ability of carrying out great positive or negative actions by displaying the knowledge of human idiosyncrasies to the general public. I don't intend to create a new ideology for the salvation of humanity. I am not under the influence of the Boericke syndrome of Messiah, at least, that is what I believe. As I have many times expressed in all my books, humanity and earth is all the time what it should be according to our past and present actions, and according to the phase of universe. Nothing is accidental and nothing is without any cause and meaning. So, After all, what really counts in the case of any person, is his individual course, his psychic evolution, the salvation of his soul, the salvation of his individual psyche, his reunion with God, his return to paradise. I do hope that other people also will realize the usefulness and importance of this knowledge of human idiosyncrasies, and maybe this will help them evolve psychologically and morally. But, after all, this is clearly a matter of theirs. Plants give up crop and let it fall to the ground. At that point their job is done successfully. They have gained the pleasure of developing flowers and seeds. The growing of these seeds is not their responsibility, their job ends there. In this book and in Volume B of this Materia Medica I describe the essence and not the complete detailed picture, of the most important and frequent idiosyncrasies. There are, of course, many others, but you don't have to learn about all of them. That's the work of a specialist, that's the work of any homeopathic doctor who wants to treat patients. As concerns the general public, complete detailed knowledge is not necessary. You see, what is most important for any person, is to realize the existence of these idiosyncratic influences to his life and to the life of all others around him. Furthermore, to realize that apart from these external idiosyncratic influences who constitute his external self, there is inside him a deeper internal self that has to do with his conscience, psyche and individual spirit. He must realize that the more detached he is from this external idiosyncratic self, the more healthy and happy and closer to God he will be. Detachment from idiosyncrasies is, indeed, one of the many golden keys that unlock the gates of paradise. 8. Hierarchical and in-depth knowledge of idiosyncrasies. In order to fully comprehend idiosyncrasies, that is, human types, one must know the structure and function of man, something that I have analyzed, in details, in other books of mine. If the several levels of man are not understood, then there will be plenty of room for misunderstandings. Furthermore, one must become familiar with the knowledge of miasmas, basic passions, and the function of thought, emotions, and behavior. Without all the above, description of homeopathic idiosyncrasies resembles a mere gossiping about zodiacs. That is the reason that I insist that anyone that wants to understand idiosyncrasies in depth, must first read my other books that refer to the above subjects. There is a line of thinking when describing human idiosyncrasies, a hierarchical line: miasmas, basic passions, thinking, emotions, behavior and physical characteristics. You see, basic passions come from miasmas. Thoughts and intellectual patterns are determined from our passions and miasmas. Behavior is determined by our emotions and these, in turn, by our thought. Furthermore, our body is determined by our behavior. So, it is essential to describe things hierarchically, that is, from causes to results, from above downwards. Moreover, I point out the essence, the main idea, the core, the heart of each and every idiosyncrasy. 9. Idiosyncratic diagram. Description of each idiosyncrasy is divided into two parts. The first one concerns a live layout of the whole picture with many examples from everyday life. The second one concerns a more hierarchical description, from level to level and from above downwards. During this second description, a certain skeleton is used, which is the following: 1. Raw material. 2. Miasmas. 3. Basic passions. 4. Essence, main idea. 5. Thinking. A. Evolutionary level. Relation with sensual, intellectual and conscience psyche. Relation of individual will with external and internal will. B. Influences. Miasmatic influences in thinking. relation with several kinds of thinking stimuli. Stressful conditions that usually derange this idiosyncrasy. See intellectual patterns. Relation with knowledge and truth, moral and religious tendencies. Introversion, extroversion, expressiveness. Personal opinions that are usually adopted from today's society. Concerning family, relations, work, etc. 6. Frequency, concerning general population and sex. 7. Emotions. General mood and degree of intellectual emotional charge. Characteristics of the emotions of this particular idiosyncrasy. 8. Behavior. Primary behavior, genotype. Main secondary behaviors, phenotype. Behavior in family, relations, sex, work, society, etc. 9. Physical level. Appearance, look, style. Usual physical predispositions for illnesses. 10. Relative idiosyncrasies. 9. Idiosyncratic diagram. Description of each idiosyncrasy is divided into 2 parts. The first one concerns a live layout of the whole picture with many examples from everyday life. The second one concerns a more hierarchical description, from level to level and from above downwards. During this second description, a certain skeleton is used, which is the following: 1. Raw material. 2. miasmas. 3. Basic passions. 4. Essence, main idea. 5. Thinking. A. Evolutionary level. Relation with sensual, intellectual and conscience psyche. Relation of individual will with external and internal will. B. Influences. Miasmatic influences in thinking. Relation with several kinds of thinking stimuli. Stressful conditions that usually derange this idiosyncrasy. See intellectual patterns. Relation with knowledge and truth, moral and religious tendencies. Introversion, extroversion, expressiveness. Personal opinions that are usually adopted from today's society. Concerning family, relations, work, etc. 6. Frequency, concerning general population and sex. 7. Emotions. General mood and degree of intellectual emotional charge. Characteristics of the emotions of this particular idiosyncrasy. 8. Behavior. Primary behavior, genotype. Main secondary behaviors, phenotype. Behavior in family, relations, sex, work, society, etc. 9. Physical level. Appearance, look, style. Usual physical predispositions for illnesses. 10. Relative idiosyncrasies. 10. Usual misinterpretations about idiosyncrasies. Idiosyncrasies are a new subject for most people. Furthermore, it affects most parts of the complex creature called human being. Thus, a lot of misinterpretations arise, from my experience, to many people that come in touch with this phenomenon for the first time. So it is very useful to lay out the most frequent misunderstandings about idiosyncrasies. A. I am idiosyncrasy X. This is the most frequent misconception. The person tends to identify himself with the idiosyncrasy that influences him at present. He ignores the fact that idiosyncrasy is just an external influence that affects him only partly. It affects only our external self, that is our body, etheric energy, sensual and intellectual psyche. It doesn't affect our conscience, psyche and individual spirit. It is easy to understand that these influences are external if you take in consideration that they keep changing all the time during our life. Furthermore, at a certain moment, we are influenced by more than one idiosyncrasy and in different proportion. So, it is obvious that idiosyncrasies are but superficial clothing covering our real internal self. Although they do have a tremendous effect on our will, thinking, feeling, and behavior. Let me give you an example so as to understand better this misconception. Let's say that we get sick from pneumonia or from depression. Although these two states have a tremendous influence on our body, thinking, emotions and behavior, still, it would be wrong to say that I am pneumonia or that I am depression even if we refer at this certain moment. So, whenever I diagnose which idiosyncrasy is the most similar to my present condition, it is wrong to say I am idiosyncrasy X, it is correct to say, at present, I am influenced more from this particular X idiosyncrasy, but I should not identify myself as X, I am much more than this external influence. If I identify myself with a certain idiosyncrasy, then I may react defensively when I read about all the negative characteristics of this certain idiosyncrasy described by the author, or when a homeopathic doctor prescribes this idiosyncrasy for me in the form of a homeopathic remedy. I may say about the author, I am not such a bad person as he describes in his books, he took me wrong, he insulted me, how come he has such a bad opinion about me? Idiosyncrasies are but nonsense. Or I may say about the homeopathic doctor, how on earth did he prescribe for me such a medicine that corresponds to such a bad idiosyncrasy? He is definitely wrong as concerns his diagnose. I will go to another doctor who thinks that I am a better person. Or I may say I can't be that bad or deranged. Homeopathy is nonsense. A person must always remember that idiosyncratic characteristics are imbalanced states of existence. There isn't, not even one, idiosyncrasy that could be characterized as balanced. They are all imbalances, they are all illnesses of body and mind, they are all external deregulating influences. If I diagnose that you suffer from pneumonia or depression, why should you be offended? The best thing that you can do is to try to get rid of that state and become healthy again, and not to identify yourself with this certain imbalance. I realize that all described idiosyncrasies are full of imperfections and passions. Aren't there any normal idiosyncrasies that correspond to the average normal person? You see, by nature, idiosyncrasies are imbalanced states compared to superior man, that is, superior in the sense of psychological and moral evolution. Often an inferior man, using his lower standards, may consider imbalanced characteristics as normal, as human, as usual, or as expected. He may even say, these are normal things, they are but natural differences of character found among all people, it is only human to have these differences, especially under stressful conditions that we live nowadays. Let me give you some examples. The average normal woman considers jealousy, up to a point, as a normal thing. She may say, why, doctor, I wouldn't be normal if I had been provoked by my husband and did not react with jealousy. This would mean that I am either stupid or that I don't love him. The average normal man may say, he disputed my integrity/sincerity/manhood. So, what did you expect me to do? It was a normal thing to punch his face. An overprotective dominant mother may say, how on earth you tell me, doctor, not to worry and be stressed about my children? I love them so much. It is a normal thing to have so many fears about their future. What we call today a normal average person, is but the imbalanced average person. If he was truly normal, then he wouldn't suffer so much from illnesses and psychological imbalance, anxiety and unhappiness as he does nowadays. It is an expected thing due to circumstances, perverted way of living, for the average person to have this imbalances. It is a very common thing, but still that doesn't make it a normal thing. If what stands for the majority of people is normal, then obesity and smoking should be considered normal. See, each person is born with a certain idiosyncrasy, which he has during all his lifetime. It is true that we are born with a certain idiosyncrasy, and this is not something accidental, but during our lifetime we are influenced each time by different idiosyncrasies. We tend, of course, to be influenced most of the times by relative idiosyncrasies, but still, there is change all the time. Some of us are due to frequent changes and some to less frequent changes. Each person, at a certain time of his life, has only one idiosyncrasy, which is totally different from others. Each one of us is influenced by all three miasmas. Furthermore, each one of us, at a certain time of his life, is influenced by more than one idiosyncrasies. But still, there is one that prevails at that certain moment. Thus, at a certain moment of his life a person may have idiosyncratic characteristics from 2 or 3 or even 4 idiosyncrasies. Life has no strict boundaries because life is motion, life is eternal change, eternal transformation. We may be affected predominantly by X idiosyncrasy at this certain moment, but after days or months we may find ourselves predominantly influenced by another relative idiosyncrasy. There are good and bad idiosyncrasies. Definitely wrong. By nature, all idiosyncrasies are imbalances. They restrict our free will, they cause illusion, they obstruct us from interpreting reality objectively. So, there aren't any good idiosyncrasies, they are all bad in the sense that they tend to cause disease either physically or psychologically. It is true, of course, that some idiosyncrasies tend to create greater imbalance while others a lesser one. The final result depends not only on the idiosyncrasy that affects us but also on many other factors like the degree of identification with this certain idiosyncrasy, our moral and cultural level, our self-awareness, etc. Don't blame me for my behavior. Blame my idiosyncrasy. I was born like that. It is so convenient to blame others. It is so convenient not to take responsibility for our past and present. So many people tend to say, "It's not my fault. That's my character, what can a person do? I was born like that, I just can't change. I was born like that and will die like that, nobody changes. It's all in the genes. All things are predestined, God created me like this. I can't do a thing about it, it's all a matter of chance. It all depends on how you were raised. You don't have any control on such things." The truth is, as I have analyzed in other books of mine, that when we are born our present miasmas and idiosyncrasy depend on our past actions in previous earthly lives. During this present life, our will, goals, attitude, and actions determine which miasma and idiosyncrasy will affect us and at what degree. So, you see, nothing is predestined irrelevantly of our actions and nothing is carried out by chance. We have the freedom of choice, to choose to live according to universal laws or according to our egoistic goals. I admit that I have many of the characteristics of this idiosyncrasy you describe, but I don't have it all. In fact, I would never think of behaving in certain ways that you describe that this certain idiosyncrasy does. Let me explain what happens. There exists a hierarchical causative chain that determines our final behavior. It's the following: miasmas, basic passions, idiosyncrasies, thoughts, emotions, primary behavior and secondary behavior. Certain other factors intervene during this procedure, like psychic evolution of the person, his moral and cultural level, how was he raised, his past experiences, his present goals, his present state of balance, external conditions, etc. This means that although two or more persons may be influenced at this very moment by the same idiosyncrasy, they may at the end present different or even seemingly contrary secondary behaviors. So it is an expected thing that a person may not recognize as familiar all characteristics of the idiosyncrasy that influences him at the present. It is also possible that other idiosyncrasies that affect him secondarily may alter his final behavior. As I said before, real life has no boundaries and especially no human intellectual boundaries. Thanks for listening this audiobook. For more updates, please subscribe and press the bell icon. Thank you.